Hey guys, what's up? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be filming my April wrap-up. In the month of April, I read a total of 10 books, which amounted to 2,804 pages. As far as ratings go of what I was reading, I read 3 5-star books, 1 4-star book, 3 3-star reads, and 3 2-star books. So it was kind of like an even balance, I guess, of good books and not so good books. I read 2 horror novels, 3 romance novels, 2 thriller novels, 2 young adult contemporary novels, and then 1 contemporary fiction / literary fiction novel. And then for male versus female authors, I read 3 male authors and 7 female authors. And I actually read 2 books by the same male author. Checking in on my goals for this month, unfortunately my book of the month goal did not happen this month. I set a goal for myself in 2019 to try to read one of my book of the month selections every month. This month I was going to read Miracle Creek, but I got 15 pages into it and I just wasn't really feeling this writing style at the moment, so unfortunately I wasn't able to get through this one this month. But my reread goal did happen this month, so I completed one of the 2 goals, I guess, I set for myself this month. Let's just jump right into it, shall we? So the very first book I read this month is A House at the Bottom of a Lake by Josh Malerman, and I buddy read this with my BFF Jacqueline, and I'll put her link in the description for her channel. Her channel is Weeby Bookin'. I decided to buddy read this one because it's been on both of our TBRs for a really long time, and it's this like horror novella. It's only like 116 pages, so it's really short. If you didn't know, this novel is about these 2 teenagers who are 17 and they go on their first date on a canoe ride over this lake. And then when they're on this canoe trip, they discover this house at the bottom of a lake, and it's like really creepy, unexplained, and very mysterious. If you're a fan of books that make you question things and you don't really get all of your answers, like it's kind of ambiguous and remains mysterious, then I think you would really enjoy this book. I personally loved the shit out of this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Like, it's a new favorite of mine because I personally really love ambiguous endings and books that make you think and like come up with theories, and because I felt so terrified while I was reading this book. Like, this is a horror novel, and I honestly felt so creeped out the whole time. I felt so claustrophobic. Like, the writing was just so good. I loved how realistic these teenagers felt. Like, they felt so real, and like their thoughts and their curiosity, and like, this was a new favorite of mine that I discovered this month, and I absolutely loved it. The second book I read this month is Jane Doe by Victoria Helen Stone. This one is an adult thriller. Follows this girl Jane who's working at this insurance company, and she becomes friends / starts to get the interest of this guy, Steven. She's like intentionally trying to reel him in for a reason. I honestly don't feel like this book is a thriller. When I think of a book that's a thriller, it's like constant plot twist, constant interesting story, and like honestly this is just a revenge story. And it's like, that's not necessarily a thriller to me. Like, there's no plot twist in this book, there's no like crazy things. Like, it's just a really awesome revenge story, I guess, but like that's just not what I was expecting at all going into this. And after hearing such great things about this book, I guess I just had really high expectations as a thriller. The one thing I will say though is that I did really enjoy Jane Doe's character. Like, I just found her to be very interesting and very entertaining, but she was the only thing I really enjoyed about this book. I don't know, I ended up giving this one 2 out of 5 stars. Like, it was alright. It was kind of a disappointment though. Third book I read this month is Birthday by Meredith Russo. This one was an ARC, and this one goes on sale May 21st. This one is a young adult contemporary novel that features a trans character. It follows these 2 kids, Morgan and Eric, and it follows them from their 13th birthday through their 18th birthday, and these 2 characters were born on the same day, and so we get to follow them in snapshots on their birthday. Like, we only follow them on their birthday for 6 different years. This book freaking tore my heart out. Like, I loved it so much. Like, it was so beautiful, and I just feel like I connected with the characters so much. I loved this style of writing too, how we only get to visit these characters once a year on their birthday every year, like their shared birthday. It was just so cute, and like, oh my gosh, I just adored both of these main characters so freaking much. They go from friendship into like romance and into like figuring out like who they are, and like, oh my god, it's just so cute. And this is the same author as that book If I Was Your Girl, and I read that one a couple years ago and I also really enjoyed that one, but this one Oh my gosh, so good, so heartwarming and heart-wrenching, and just like, ugh, all of the feels with this one. So I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. Like, it's literally a new favorite of mine. Loved it so much. Do not miss this one when it comes out next month. Oh my god. The fourth book I read this month is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, and I also buddy read this one with Jacqueline because we were like, it was so much fun to buddy read, let's do it again. This one is an adult thriller that was my book of the month selection from January earlier this year that I never got around to. This one is freaking epic as hell, and I'm so glad that I finally read this. This is an adult thriller that follows this guy, Theo, who's a psychotherapist who goes to this mental hospital where this girl, Alicia, is being held because she randomly murdered her husband for no apparent reason, and she hasn't spoken since the murder, and so he's going in there to try and like talk to her and get her to think about what happened, get her to talk again since this murder that she committed for no apparent reason. This book, oh my gosh, it reminded me a lot of the TV show The Sinner with Jessica Biel. Like, that's one of my favorite more recent TV shows, and this book reminded me a lot of that because you spend the entire book trying to figure out why this seemingly normal woman would go and like kill someone, you know. Like, loved this book. Like, there are so many good plot twists. Like, the one plot twist towards the end, I literally like, oh my god, what? My mind was freaking blown. Like, oh my god, I loved it so much. Like, it's a new all-time favorite thriller of mine. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and like, oh my gosh. This had a really great start to my month because I discovered 3 of my new, like, all-time favorite books, like, right away. Highly recommend The Silent Patient. It's so good. So many plot twists, such fast-paced writing, and just amazing. The next book that I read was my reread of Unteachable by Leah Rader. This author now goes by Elliot Wake. This was one of my favorite books of all time. I read this book for the first time in 2014, so it's been 5 years since I first read this, and this is a new adult romance novel that is like a student-teacher relationship romance novel. And this time around, unfortunately, like, I didn't love it as much as I did the first time, and I think the main reason for that is because, like, I know for a fact the first time I read this, like, the reason I loved it so much is because the writing is absolutely gorgeous in this, and it still is. Like, I agree, like, the writing is freaking beautiful, and it has some of my favorite book quotes of all time in this book. Like, the roller coaster falling in love metaphor is one of my favorite book passages, like, ever. Like, I just love it so much. And I loved it because Macy is going to school to be a film student, and her teacher that she's like in a relationship with is her film teacher. So I loved the whole like discussion about movies in this book and how they both like loved movies and film, and I still loved those things about it this time, but I felt like this book, they got together like right in the beginning, and then like the whole story was just like, there was no plot. It was just like sex scene after sex scene after sex scene, and like nothing was, there was like a slight risk of them getting caught sometimes, but like it wasn't very investing, and like, I don't know, I just loved it a lot more the first time I read this, and this time around it was like a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I picked up was Normal People by Sally Rooney. This was an ARC from Penguin Random House that I received, and this book went on sale this month. This book is kind of hard to explain like what it's about. It basically just follows these 2 young people, Connell and Marianne, through their teenagehood and then through like the beginning of like their college years. I feel like this book just doesn't really have a plot at all. It's kind of just like a slice of life story where you're just kind of following these 2 characters through a period of their lives, through their complicated, dramatic teenage relationship, and like their relationship is very complicated over these years, and they're just like not very interesting characters in my opinion, and I found like this book really hard to get into because like I just didn't really care about these characters. Like, sometimes they said things that made me laugh and I could connect with them a little bit, but then most of the time I just kind of felt bored and very uninterested. So I ended up giving this one 2 out of 5 stars. Like, it was not really what I was expecting and not a favorite, which is unfortunate. It also does that really obnoxious thing where it doesn't have any quotation marks around the talking parts, and it makes it very difficult for my brain to read because like I just, oh my gosh, like I have to reread like every line that is dialogue because I don't realize it's dialogue when it's happening. I really hate that style of writing. Like, I know it's meant to be like artsy or whatever, but I just really do not enjoy no quotation marks. Like, they exist for a reason. The 7th book I read this month is When Ashes Fall. This is a book I just randomly picked up. It's a new adult romance that I've been hearing like a lot of amazing things about. The description kind of doesn't tell you too much about it, but it's basically about this girl who's like in love with two men at the same time and whatever, and she's like, and if you think this is about cheating, you couldn't be more wrong. And it's like the one guy is like a pilot. It takes place in Boston, and she's like a first responder slash like 911 dispatcher person. And then there's this other guy that she meets, and it's like kind of a romance love triangle thing. I really liked that it took place in Boston, and I really liked that she was like a 911 dispatcher. I thought that was really cool, and I don't think I've ever read a book about a character that does that for a job before, so I thought that that was actually really interesting about this. Okay, so like for this entire book, you're trying to figure out how this is not like cheating, because she's like going back and forth between the two guys. It was very obvious to me what was happening from the beginning. Like, I don't know why, I just like from the beginning I like called it what it was gonna be, and then at the end of the book there's this like huge dramatic reveal about what I thought was gonna happen, and so it kind of like ruined the book for me, because then I felt like throughout the whole book the mystery wasn't really like a mystery to me, because I kind of already knew what was gonna happen. So it was just kind of like a lot of it felt like filler to me, and I was just like waiting for the like reveal to happen. I don't know, I ended up giving this one 2 out of 5 stars. Like, it definitely had some redeeming qualities about it, but for the most part I was kind of bored, and I thought the reveal was like really dramatic and kind of just obvious, and I don't know if it was supposed to be obvious. Like, I don't know. The 8th book I read this month is Inspection by Josh Malerman. This book is his newest novel that is a horror novel that is about these boys and girls that are being kept in separate towers, and they aren't aware that the opposite gender even exists. This book, honestly, this book doesn't really feel like a horror novel to me. Like, there was nothing about this book that gave me horror novel vibes. This story was written in a way that was just so confusing, and like the boys are all called the alphabet boys, and they all have the names like A through Z. So like the main character is J. I feel like if I hadn't read the description of what this book is about, I would have been so confused when reading this book, because it's like very unclear what is happening in this book. And I feel like too, when you realize like why these monster human beings decided to like keep these boys and girls separated, like when you realize the reason like why they're doing it, I feel like it's such a lame and like stupid reason. And it's hard to talk about this book without spoiling you, but I feel like the author made a huge oversight on something that's just like not okay. I don't know, like this book was just very odd. It was strange, but honestly like this book didn't really feel like a horror, and it didn't really feel like a thriller either. It just kind of felt like this weird contemporary psychological experiment that was somewhat interesting but mostly just strange. I ended up giving this one 2 out of 5 stars as well. It just like was not as good as I was expecting. Like, this was one of my most anticipated books of the year because it's Josh Malerman. The 9th book I read this month is Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno. I finally just decided to give this book a go, because this one is not one that I would usually pick up on my own. Like, I probably would have never picked this book up on my own, but I've heard amazing reviews about this book from so many of my favorite booktubers, so I just decided to give this one a shot. And this one is a young adult contemporary magical realism story about these two sisters on an island in the summertime. Their family's kind of like magical, like they each have their own powers. They have this previous family member who's turned into a bird, and she comes back to the island every year, and the story's kind of about how they're waiting for the bird to come back to the island, and then our main character is trying to discover what her powers are because she's about to turn 18 and she still doesn't know what her powers are. This book has a lot of really great representation in it as well, because the main character is a lesbian and her best friend is an asexual. There's just a lot of really great diverse representation in this book on top of a really beautiful story. And honestly, like, this book was such a gorgeously written book. Like, I loved the writing style so much. It was so charming and magical and whimsical, and I usually don't really enjoy magical realism. Like, it's just not my thing, but I really loved it in this book. I just thought it was so freaking beautiful, and I loved the main character, and I loved her relationship with her sister. Like, they just had such a beautiful relationship. And this story actually has some heavy trigger warnings for some things that I was not expecting at all. Like, it got a lot dark towards the end, and I just was not expecting it to go there at all. So I'll put a link in the description for my Goodreads review if you'd like to see a trigger warning like thing in my review, because I do feel like it's a spoiler, like what the trigger warning is. This was just so good and so beautiful and just like unexpectedly amazing and almost made me cry at the end, and wow. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. Like, it's not like a new all-time favorite of mine, but like I think it's definitely something that's worth your time, and it's really important and really feminist and really beautiful. Alright, and the last book that I read this month is Intercepted by Alexa Martin, and this one was an ARC that I received in September last year, and I just never got around to it, but now the new book just came out, so I'm kind of like wanting to read this book so I can get to the sequel. And this book is about this girl named Marlee who is dating this guy that's like this huge NFL star, but they've been dating for like 10 years and he still hasn't proposed. She's a part of the like wives club on their football team, even though she's not technically a wife yet. But then Chris's football team gets this new guy, Gavin, traded to their team, and Gavin is this guy that Marlee has history with. So then we get this like love triangle between these two football players and Marlee. This book was okay. Like, I wasn't a super huge fan of like either of the romances happening in this book. The writing style in this book was like kind of obnoxious because she would like hashtag her life. Like, literally there's like a hashtag on like almost every single page of this book. Right on the very first page, she's like, hashtag he didn't put a ring on it, sometimes I like to hashtag my life, hashtag cheaper than therapy. And like from that point on, there's like a hashtag on almost like every single fucking page. Gosh, I can't even imagine listening to the audiobook of this because it's probably like hashtag this, hashtag that. Like, oh geez. I mean, overall this romance was okay. It was just kind of like meh and like forgettable, and so I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. Like, it wasn't the worst thing ever, but it was just kind of like eh. Those are all of the books that I read in April. How many books did you read in April? What was the best book you read in April? And of course, if you have any thoughts on any of these books that I've read, let me know what your thoughts are. I think for sure my 3 favorite books that I read this month is The Silent Patient, Birthday, and A House at the Bottom of a Lake. I just loved these books so much, and I found new favorite books of all time with these books. I also kind of find it funny that I read 2 books that start with I that are one word, Inspection and Intercepted. Like, how strange. I also think it is very strange that I read 2 books by the same author this month, and one of them is a 5 out of 5 star read for me, and the other one is a 2 out of 5 star. Like, crazy. Alright, that is all I have for you this month, so thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you guys soon with a new video.